you're all doing good. Today we are into the last part of the poem Mending Wall by Robert Frost. In the last session we learned that the poem looks simpler at its surface and has a deeper layer of meaning beneath. The title of the poem, Mending Wall, itself is ambiguous. Mending can be used either as a verb or an adjective. If it is used as a verb, it can signify the act involving the neighbor and the speaker repairing the walls. And if it is used as an adjective, it can imply the wall or the relationship that they are trying to mend. Without waiting much, let's move on to the stanza because we have a lot to discuss on the poetic devices used.
Spring is a mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I would ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love your wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him. But it's not elves exactly, and I would rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top, in each hand like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods, only at the shade of trees. He will not go beyond his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors.
Let's dig deeper into each lines. We are already familiar with the lines. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, and good fences make good neighbors. In the first stanza, and let's see why these lines are repeated. Spring is a mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Spring is a mischief in me. Every spring, the speaker seeks out his neighbor to repair the wall. The poet himself doesn't love a wall, but the poet redeems or converts the work by transforming it to the pleasure of an outdoor game. The poet remains in a playful mood. He attributes his mischievous mood to the season of color, vibrance and energy which arouses or brings out the child in the poet. That is why the poet considers the spring season mischievous. The speaker apparently considers the wall unnecessary as neither individuals own cows that could intrude or enter on others' land. Before I built a wall, I would ask to know what I was walling in or walling out. When the poet says walling in or walling out, he tries to express a dilemma or a confusion that he is in. He ponders or wonders what purpose the stone wall between him and his neighbor really serves. He is not sure whom he is blocking or allowing. That is, he is not knowing what was being separated and what was being brought together with help of the wall. And to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I would rather he said it for himself. The speaker is desperate to find ways to convince his neighbor. He says he could point towards elves as a reason, but he knows it's not really elves. Elves means a spirit or supernatural being. He suggests that the neighbor should come up with a reason for the same on his own. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top, in each hand like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. The speaker now finally believes that the neighbor is living in darkness. Darkness is not a result of woods, that is forest or tree shades, but the darkness of ignorance. This is also symbolic in suggesting that the neighbor's thoughts and ideas were archaic. Archaic means old. Here, the neighbor's ideas are considered to be old. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. The neighbor stands his ground and utters again that good fences make good neighbors. He is unwilling to go beyond his father's say.
Now that we have analyzed each lines, and suppose you are asked to write character sketches of the neighbor and the speaker, we can say that the speaker is delineated or sketched as an adamant who absurdly sticks on to his forefathers' wisdom. He repeats the dictum, good fences make good neighbors. But he doesn't actually imbibe its implied meaning. That is why he is referred to as a man who belongs to the Stone Age, whereas the speaker is a farmer who has a broader outlook. He also has a deep sense of humor. He believes that a wall is built between walls only for convenience. His view is that a wall is not necessary, or a wall is necessary only at certain places. And this is what he is trying to convince his neighbor, but he fails. What about the poetic devices or language elements used? We have already stated that it's a thought-provoking poem. Though it looks simple, it has a profound subject. The dramatic opening is very impressive. Nature and farming related colloquial words are used. This is more or less a dramatic monologue with conversation that operates at different levels. At times we find the speaker or the narrator addressing the readers, or talking to the stones, and often repeating the neighbor's dictum. The most striking part of the poem is the imaginary conversation the poet likes to have with his neighbor. Moreover, the poet has successfully used various poetic devices like simile, metaphor, alliteration, and etc. It goes on. Let's learn each of these poetic devices one by one, which actually enhances the charm of the poem.
Let's take a quick glance at the poetic devices used. I think I needn't explain all these in much detail regarding what simile or metaphor or anything of that sort is. Moreover, I have already given an elaborate explanation in the previous videos. I will just point out the lines which carries these poetic devices.
Let's start with simile. In each hand, like an old stone savage. The use of like makes this line a simile. Metaphor. Some are loaves and some so nearly balls. Stones are compared to loaves and balls. Alliteration. What I was walling in or walling out. The sound wa is repeated. And we also find alliteration in the line. It's not elves exactly. The repetition of the sound Paradox. Paradox by juxtaposing two opposing instances and opinions. Allusion. We find allusion to elves from folklore. Ambiguity. We find ambiguity in the title itself, mending wall, where mending can be used as a verb and adjective. Pun. Pun is seen in the word offense, sounding like a fence.
Symbol. We find symbol in the lines he is all pine and I am apple orchard. In the last video we saw what pine and apple orchard represent. Wall is also a symbol of mental and physical barrier. This symbol reveals the theme of the poem. The 20th century man's incapability to engage in meaningful communication is symbolically represented. He is rather confused and fails to convince his neighbor. Irony. Irony is reflected when we find the speaker and the neighbor engaging in the activity with a purpose to mend the wall between their properties. But the outcome of the activity is quite different from what they expected. The speaker ironically remarks that they wear out fingers rough with handling them. Mystery. We find mystery in the gap that is formed in spite of the routine activity of setting it right. His references to spell and elves add to the magical air of mystification. Comparing the dissenting neighbor to a stone savage groping in darkness hints to the neighbor's thought process that are mysterious and unreformed. The reference, "no one has seen them made or heard them made," mystifies the usual occurrence. While referring to elves, speaker doesn't actually know the culprit who pulls the walls down. He accuses the elves. It reveals or exposes the weird thoughts of his dilemma. That is why a 20th century man says it, there's a supernatural force behind this to convince the neighbor. He hopes his neighbor may find out that actual culprit on his own. Humor in how the wall resists man's effort to maintain it. His remark, "stay where you are until our backs are turned," and his references like elves and spell clubs mystery with humor. His humor sense is also seen in the way he regards it as an outdoor game, succeeds in drawing a humorous caricature by repeating the dictum and comparing the neighbor to Stone Savage. Hope you understood the theme. Yes, the widely accepted theme of mending wall is that a self-imposed barrier prevents human interaction. And hence, the speaker is of the view that the wall, instead of benefiting, actually divides them. But the neighbor who pointlessly or relentlessly rebuilds and maintains the wall. We can find a diplomatic way of writing by Frost. He offers no answers or clues. Mending wall implies that neither neighbor's viewpoints can be justified as a superior. The poet also successfully emphasizes that no viable conclusion can be given to an age-old problem. Yet, the tolerance that Frost exhibits or showcases while maintaining the wall for the sake of his neighbor is what all we need to learn. Let's develop this patient listening towards our neighbors to build a fraternity among us. And that's all about the poem. Thank you. Let's all be a part of human fraternity. Stay home, stay safe.